Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unbound. I'm Nicola Humber, author of Unbound and founder of the Unbound Press. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Lloyd of Indigo Soul PR. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Nicola. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited to see what comes out of our conversation. And Indigo Soul PR is an intuitive public relations company, and I love Sarah's approach to PR, which is, it's kind of an industry and an area that can be very kind of ego-centered, ego-based, but Sarah's approach is totally different, and I'm sure this will come up more during our conversation. But Sarah is also a Reiki master and an angelic healer. So she brings all of that into her approach to PR. And very excitingly, she's also recently signed to the Unbound Press to write her first book, Connecting the Dots, which is in progress at the moment. So yeah, very excited about that. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, oh my God, it's like, it's kind of scary, but I feel that I need to do this work. And I mean, I know that I've come on to one of your masterclasses in the past, but I mean, my career started in corporate comms, so I've worked the masculine and the normal way of PR. But I realised, I don't know, things have just dropped in recently to basically say to me, you've always been like this, you've always worked this way. There have been times where you have worked in the more traditional sense, and they're the times when it never worked, because I was throwing things at the wall just to see if it stuck. And I just feel, I guess, I feel like there's a duty, or someone needs to say that there is another way. You can tune into your gut instinct. You can do things slightly differently. You don't have to follow the crowd, or even do the things that we've always done. And we were talking about this the other day, Nicola, on kind of our calls around how marketing as well has got into that point where we feel we have to do it this way because we've always done it this way. And I see so many kind of people who are spiritually aware, kind of trying to fit themselves into that box, and it just doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel comfortable. And I feel that's why this book would be maybe a breath of fresh air for people who are wanting to step out and promote themselves, but in a more gentler, more feminine way.
Yeah.
And that's why I was drawn to the Unbound Press, obviously. So
we're very aligned in our mission.
Absolutely.
And we can get really, when we're speaking about it, we can get kind of quite fired up about it. I know.
Yeah, I better not F and Jeff.
But I normally ask in these conversations, I mean, they're very free flowing, but I do normally ask this question because obviously the theme of all my work is about being unbound and unbinding ourselves from all those stories about who and how we should be in the world. But is there a time in your life that comes to mind where you felt particularly bound in a situation, and how did you kind of move beyond that?
I think it's a lot to do, there was two things, and it was very much around the fact that I in my corporate life, I did what you were supposed to do. I did what the good girl would do. I worked my way up the ladder. I did the right thing. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I got to the top of that ladder and thought, this isn't what I want. Hang on a minute. I thought that there was going to be some good stuff at the top of this ladder. And in fact, it was just more shit. Sorry. But it was very, I always kind of tried to I did my own PR on myself. I kind of tried to convince myself that that's what I wanted. But what I found was, and you get this in many corporates, is you gravitate away from the things that you enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
the more you progress up the ladder, if you like. So I moved away from the stuff I loved, which was seeing coverage and getting people's messages out there and kind of being creative. So I think at the bottom of the ladder, which is awful because actually that's just so wrong, and that's where corporate, I think, is so wrong.
Yeah.
You're able to be a bit more creative and you can kind of get away with more stuff. And when I got to the top, I was given a creative job and I was told, you know, we need to do some creative campaigns, but within reason. So they'd always shove me back in this box because that doesn't fit. I don't like that. And there would always be other people making those decisions around me. And I think that's where I got to the point where I just felt like, oh, I've just moved up and I'm not kind of living my full potential. I'm not being as creative as I want to be. And the decision was taken out of my hands, really. I went on a retreat to Glastonbury, and we all know how powerful it is there. And I set the intention that I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to share people's stories, and I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. And here I am. I'm doing all three things, and that manifested itself within 6 months. So it just goes to show, when you change, kind of you step out of that box and see the possibility. You're the only person that limits you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realised or appreciated that was what was happening. So
absolutely,
huge lessons for me.
Yeah. And a huge step that was. I mean, you talk about kind of stepping out of that box and kind of giving yourself permission to do that, and making this decision to start your own business and be a writer. And that's not all down to Glastonbury. So, I mean, Glastonbury's a really powerful place.
It was a big pivot. Yeah,
for you to make that decision is really courageous. So what was it like for you to do that and to like let the people around you know that this is what you were going to do?
It was interesting because I got to a point where I'd been moved into this amazing global job, and it was all the bells and whistles, and I found myself sitting doing nothing all day long, waiting for the US to come online and to tell me I was doing it wrong, kind of thing. So it's like, this is a bit of a weird situation. And at the time and then I started to sort of enjoy the fact that I was getting paid, and it's terrible. It just did not sit well with me because I was sitting there being paid and not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to sort of, that's when I was getting my Reiki training. So I was using the time for different things. but essentially when that decision came up, basically I had a new boss came on board in the US, and he was so masculine and such a bully, actually. He just came in, and I literally had one meeting with him, and he pretty much said to me, let's make your role redundant. I don't actually know what you do. And I said, well, I don't know what I do, and let's do it. But then they came up with an opportunity to move into another role, which was essentially something that it was a completely different job altogether. It was something I'd never done before, and it was basically would have meant that my career in PR would be over. I'd be doing some kind of marketing communications, which I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very clear choice for me. It was kind of stay here and be in a stable environment and earn the money as you have been and stay in that paradigm, or be free and do, you've got 20 years under your belt of experience, use it, kind of thing. So when I it was interesting, when I spoke to my parents about it, they were like, no, stay, take the job, keep the job, you've got kids.
Yeah.
But my husband and I, funnily enough, it all happened when we went to Las Vegas for our 40th birthdays, and we were on this plane going over the Grand Canyon, and the pilot turned around and said, I bet you think that I've been flying this plane forever. I bet you think, you looking at me, I'm an old dude. Hey, he's reliable. He's been flying his plane for years. He said, I've got an interesting insight for you. He said, I only learnt to fly my plane 5 years ago.
Oh my
He
goodness.
said I changed my stars in my 40s, and it just was like, there's the sign.
Yeah.
I need to do this.
Yeah,
I said to Tom, I was
absolutely.
like, the pilot told me I need to leave. And
Oh,
he
that's
was,
amazing.
my husband we were in such a good place. It was he was like, look, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
So it was great. My kids are obviously really supportive because I'm there for pick up and drop off,
Yeah.
which is something I always wanted to do as well. And I feel like I have a duty of care as a mother to try and undo some of the paradigms that they're getting taught at school as well. It's bigger for me as well, and I know the media plays a massive part of that too. So just feels like there's a big job to be done. I'm not saying that my book's going to do it all, but I'd like to chip away at it for sure.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. The impact of each book, and even for people who aren't necessarily writing books, but I think anyone who kind of takes themselves out of the box in one way or another and starts making changes in their own life, the impact of that does ripple out in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
There's lots of different layers to what you do and kind of how that is impacting on people. So it's really powerful. And that thing about kind of changing direction, like in our 40s or around that time, I know I was in my late 30s when I made the decision to leave finance and start my own business. I think a lot of us, when we get to that kind of age, we just can't stay in the box anymore. It's like, no, it's too uncomfortable.
No, absolutely. And I think we're taught it from a really early age, and it only dropped in kind of recently, in that the kids have to be at school at a certain time and they're learning, and it's very compartmentalized. And no wonder we go into 9 to 5, because we think that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that that's going to change for my kids, just by doing something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So your book is called Connecting the Dots.
Yes.
And I love that title. But can
Yeah.
you tell us a bit more about, what do you mean by connecting the dots? Tell us a bit more about your approach.
Sure. So I've always despised working. There was always this part of me in communications where you'd have to tell little white lies or spin things to suit the audience. And a lot of it would be, it wouldn't be massive white lies, but I have worked for big corporations and have had to tell quite big lies, and it never felt good. And I think the thing that I've found, and you can see the media landscape, the amount of untruths that are coming out, that are coming to the surface, the Me Too stuff, all these the media gagging that came out not long ago, all that sort of stuff. It's just people that have lied. And I feel like if people had told the truth from day one, then they wouldn't be in that situation, right? And we're taught that from a very young age, and that's kind of where the inspiration came from. It's like, why do we spin shit? Why don't we just tell the truth, speak in our authentic voice, and speak from our hearts? And that then is so powerful. People will be inspired just to hear the truth. Why do we feel the need to lie? So that's kind of my ultimate, that sort of sits underneath everything that I try and do. So I always talk to my clients about how everyone is a diamond. We're multifaceted. There are different aspects to us that will appeal to different people and different audiences. And that's when you come into the PR world, you have a story and you change it slightly, but you maintain the truth in my mind. So you do change it slightly to fit the audience that you're trying to approach or trying to reach out to. And so, that's one of the dots. It's essentially you're the dot, you're the center dot, and then you change your story, or you change your story to suit that audience. So you're connecting to those dots. But also the other thing is, it's just connecting the right story to the right media, who then will reach the right person. So it's almost like a ripple effect as well. And at the end of the day, it's kind of, if your story goes into a magazine and one person reads that magazine and it changes that one person's life, then you've done your job.
Yeah.
You don't need to be changing hundreds and hundreds of people's lives. I mean, that is lovely, right? But that message spoke to that person. You've changed a life. You've changed their world. And I think that's the difference, is we get so ahead of ourselves. We feel like we need to just scattergun and just chuck stuff out, and it will change everyone's lives, and that's what's going to happen. But it's one person at a time, and that's what we need to remember. And it's bring it back to the small to make the big change, if that makes sense. I'm kind of waffling.
No, you're not. You're not.
But I think that, you know, and I mean, the book is going to be kind of designed, it's going to be a story about my journey, so in publicity, and how I've kind of worked with masculine energy and worked with intuitive energy, and how I'm using that intuitive energy, and I can kind of prove that it does work. You don't have to be going full pelt at stuff. People do want a gentler approach. They don't want to be bombarded all the time. And, you know, if someone's going to buy your book, they'll buy your book when it's the time is right for them. You know, it's not just because it's a bestseller. I mean, people don't buy that crap anymore. I think people are really starting to understand that. Or, I mean, you see all this other stuff that's affecting it too, you know, cleaning our energy of our homes of things, you know, that means that you're not going to go out and buy another book to put on your bookshelf to gather dust. You're going to read it because it's meaningful to you, right? So all of these things are affecting each other. And I just think if you're speaking from your heart and you're connected and you know who you want to reach out to, and you tailor that message to that person, then you've changed that world.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the quality of connection, isn't it? Rather than just putting it out there.
Community, chemistry. It's always been about that stuff. And I think that's another thing that always felt wrong to me in business, is that there are always going to be times when that stuff does work, because it wouldn't be around.
Yeah.
But people now are wising up to that stuff too.
Yeah.
And
it just feels off, doesn't it? You know, particularly for those of us who are kind of tapped into our intuition and more sensitive, like anything where it feels, I mean, authenticity, you talk about authenticity and kind of speaking our truth. And even that has become kind of a marketing tactic that, you know, is used in this kind of way that can feel quite off. You kind of know that somebody's just kind of using those buzzwords in order to and present a particular image.
And the affiliate stuff that's happening as well, you know, where someone is taking someone else's message and pushing it out, that will only work for so long. And then if it's not in alignment with you, it's definitely not going to work. And I find that with clients, when energetically, when they're completely invested in their business and they really want to push a product out the door, or a book or a business out, or a message, the stuff comes in, it aligns, and the stuff appears when it is meant for that person. But equally, when they're energetically not invested for a couple of months because they're dealing with something else or whatever, I can feel that change, which then becomes planning and thinking and re-evaluating time. And I think that naturally happens with everybody. I think you have a couple of months where things start to align and there is a bit of a push and there's big energy behind stuff, and then you need that time to just kind of hang on. You're almost going with the seasons and the flow as well, and that, I feel, that's just standard. And I feel in my business we were always being beaten up when we had quiet periods, because it needed to be all the time, momentum needed to be all the time. But it's kind of, well, I feel like now I realise that there is going to be natural peaks and troughs, because everybody has those peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting observation.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And, you know, a big part of like living unbound is to really harness the power of your cyclical nature and allow your cyclical nature. And, you know, that shows up in so many different ways. But we can't just be out there all the time, kind of, you know, putting ourselves out there. It's not natural. And when we try and push through and do that, it's not going to work. You know, you're just not going to get the results that you want, because you're pushing against your natural kind of energy. So I love that you bring that into what you do. And I'm just thinking, you know, connecting the dots and everything you're speaking about, it kind of makes me think of how we met, Sarah, which was in quite a magical way. Like
that was a book, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Sarah and I met at a Rebecca Campbell event 2 or 3 years ago now. We didn't know each other. We're sitting next to each other or near each other, and ended up doing one of the exercises together.
Yeah, what would you do if you weren't afraid?
Yeah, which, you know, was really powerful for both of us.
Changed my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I did that.
Yeah, you literally did. You went off from that event and you did it. But then we didn't kind of stay in touch after that. It was literally kind of sitting next to someone at an event and doing one of these exercises. And it was last year when we bumped into each other at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival in London, because you were working with Katie Brockhurst, who is someone else who's doing amazing work around social media and approaching it in a different way. And we knew that we'd met before, but I couldn't think where. And like, oh, it was at the Rebecca Campbell event. So it was like really magical. I mean, you know, obviously kind of meant to connect with each other, and we weren't quite sure what that connection would lead to, but just really trusting it. And now you're writing a book for the Unbound Press, and I'm sure, you know, you and your work is going to be a bigger part of the Unbound Press as well. So yeah. So these are the kind of connections that you're
this is the abundance.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just about the coverage and the, you know, it does become in a normal PR environment, it's all about the numbers, it's all about the wodge of press coverage. It's, you know, they do talk about quality over quantity, but it always comes back to quantity. And that's because of the people that are paying the money and paying the agencies, and it's proving their worth, right? And it's quite an interesting one, because PRs feel they always have to prove their worth, because PR is such a like wafty type, you know, you can't ever guarantee coverage, but what you can guarantee is connection. And that is probably more important, because if you build that relationship, I talk about it in my book. There was this guy, I had a brief, I needed to get coverage in the FT, and that was that was the ultimate holy grail. So I was off on that. That's how am I going to do it? And I had to be very not strategic. I definitely went into my intuitive state in that situation and thought, okay, how am I going to make this work? Because the client that I was working with at the time was really dull. So I did.
They're not watching.
Like, how do we need to do this? We need to figure this out. And it turns out that the guy from the FT and my client were massively into jazz. I sorted it, you know, it's as silly as setting up a dinner and them sitting together, and it was very Bridget Jones kind of meet so-and-so, meet so-and-so, but they made the connection. We then got to talk about what we needed to talk about from the business perspective. He then, from the FT, decided to cover that client, and he was front of mind because he was a jazz guy. So, and that was nothing to do with the business. It was all to do with his relationship with that guy. So, and that is the other thing, is like, it's always about the relationship is key to that situation, or key to creating a change. And I mean, I always say to my clients, if I don't have a relationship, I'll go and get it, you know. I'll go and nurture that relationship because I know it's important. So
Yeah. And it's being creative about that, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't just, just sit with it and think about, don't just send a press release, either get on the phone or get in front of them at an event, just not like hunt them down, but that's kind of what I used to be known as, being a bit of a bloodhound. I'd go off and sniff out the press, and but then I built that relationship, and that's how I got good results.
Exactly.
So
and just going back to that idea that kind of numbers are everything, that certainly kind of corporates have, but I think that definitely feeds into smaller businesses and kind of authors and entrepreneurs who are working on their own, maybe, this idea that it's all about the numbers. And actually, no, when we bring it back to just creating those real kind of magical connections, that's so much more powerful. And it's just such a relief as well, not to have to worry about the numbers.
Yeah. And it could be that you literally, all you want to do is go and be in one particular magazine.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you go into that, start going down that path, and if you feel like that magazine doesn't feel right, then it normally isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing. It's like I see so many people, I want to be in Soul and Spirit, and then you kind of have to think about the readers of that magazine, think about who they are and what types of people they are, and whether your story is going to be relevant to them or not. That's the other thing. It's like knowing, and I know you asked me this question when we sort of signed the book, it's kind of knowing who your audience is.
Yeah.
When you write your book, you're tailoring your book to an audience that then follows through into your publicity.
Mm-hmm.
So you can then tailor your targets, if you like, and I hate that word, but the people that you want to reach out to, your book is tailored to that person. So essentially, if it's going to work and that person is ready to receive your work, then there won't be any issue or any block.
So it's just being really intentional about
Very
it,
much so.
isn't it? Yeah.
No,
it's not. I could literally talk to you all day about this, Sarah, and we will definitely get you on again when the book comes out. So it's going to be coming out, we're hoping, like in the summer.
Hopefully summertime. We're working with the Bluebell energy. That's what we know. That's what.
Just say a little bit about that, the Bluebell.
Oh yeah, I met a mutual friend through Katie, actually. He is a flower reader, and he told me that I'm Bluebell energy, which is essentially connector or connecting energy. So that's kind of, it was really interesting. So it really struck a chord with me. I was like, oh my God, my book, Bluebells, this is it. This is what I'm here for. So I'm sitting with the Bluebell energy quite regularly now to bring this message to life.
I saw some bluebells yesterday, and it made me think of you. Whenever I see them now, I really want to know what flower I am. I need to kind of connect with this guy.
I'll put you in touch.
Thanks. Anyone who wants to know, we'll have to put a link to it.
Let me know, and I'll pass it on.
And if anyone wants to connect with you, Sarah, or find out more about what you do and how you work, and not necessarily about flower, about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my website is www.indigosoulpr.com, and I am actually due to launch a very gentle course. It's not a full-on, you're going to earn loads of money type course. It's work with me as well, to kind of build on PR knowledge. And if you really want to do it yourself and do it gently, I that's what I'm kind of looking to roll out as well at the same time. But also, you can meet me on the website, or I'm on Instagram as well, Sarah_Lloyd, Indigo Soul PR as well. So they're the two places you can find me.
Yay! And we'll put the link to your website below this video so people can see that easily.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And of course, we'll be keeping you updated with news about Sarah's book over at the Unbound Press as well. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, it'll be such a pleasure. And yeah, we'll see you again soon for another episode of Unbound. Bye.